I'm Brad, and we're here in the Talking Glass Media Studios in downtown Prescott Valley in our very own town center. I'm really excited today to have John join us. John is a member of the Prescott Realty Group in the greater Prescott area, as well as the founder of Southwest Homes. John, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here, Brad. Thanks.
Our podcast is all about living a good life. And my premise to that has been, we're all going through life and we're all in different stages. You have the people just moving out of their parents' house. You have the people in the prime of their careers just trying to get ready for retirement, people retiring. And we all have a different version of what it means to live a good life. And what does all that mean when it comes to design? And in particular, communities, how we all live together, where we're all coming from. And what I want to explore with you today is what you do. I want to introduce you to our listeners, and we're going to dive into how that fits into community, how that fits into design, and why is it important. Sure. And then maybe if we have time, we'll look at, like, what do you see the future of what you do, and where is it going? And so I know you deal with manufactured homes, and I have a feeling that when people first hear of manufactured homes, they have this image of the worst trailer park they've ever seen in their life, falling apart, half crumbled trailers. It's not much different than when we started doing multifamily. My first image was, well, it's gonna be like where I lived when I was in college. And when I first got out of college, it's like, that's all you could afford. And apartments back then were just a place to live. Today, they're a lifestyle. They're people who don't want responsibility of maintenance of homes. They want a pool, they want games, a movie theater. They want to live with others, and they want to be able to lock the door and leave for the weekend and not have to worry about when they come home. And so where I'd like to start with you in Southwest Homes is, can you give us an update about what your product really is today versus what maybe the image our listener has about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the comparisons or the metaphors that I like to use sometimes with folks is, I'll ask people, because you're absolutely right, though we have a stigma, right, that's been, just like our trades jobs have been portrayed in Hollywood to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. You have this plumber that didn't get educated that might be, not as smart, and whatever Hollywood does with that kind of perspective, that's been true of, manufactured homes. And I always give this metaphor of, we used to not, it wasn't that long ago that we had these giant brick phones with antennas that we would use. But because of technology, those are now one screen, beautiful, sleek, and, really smart phones. Well, just in the same way that the phone has gone from a brick phone to a smartphone, housing technology and how we build houses have changed dramatically. And I always give people that metaphor because I'm like, you got to remember, just as the world is progressing in technology and improving in different facets, healthcare, the phone industry, technologies, it's also done that in the housing. Our homes right now are almost very, very similar compared to site-built homes in 2x6 construction, energy standards and insulation, mechanical systems that you wouldn't see the difference in. And that happened because before, if you had a water heater that went bad in a manufactured home, you would have to go to a manufactured home, mobile home parts store and get that water heater. All the plumbing fixtures, the materials that they used in those homes used to be specific to that industry. It was a very, it was an industry pushed to the side, really. Now you don't see the difference. Now you're seeing a brochure for a manufactured home with Delta faucets, with Whirlpool appliances, stainless steel appliances, with 2x6 construction, all the same energy standards. So what we're seeing now is folks going to a model home in a new subdivision, new community, looking inside, having the beautiful beams through the ceiling, having the appliances that they like, seeing the construction and the quality that they want to see. And we'll have them come and shop us and go into our manufactured homes and go, well, my gosh, there's about $150,000 to $200,000 gap here, and they're trying to investigate and figure out where that's happening. But really the magic happens in the sense in the assembly line, in the factory built, right? No general contractor, no subcontractor right now can compare with the price of construction of what we're seeing in factory homes right now, factory facilities, sorry. So I think that's kind of, you're right, the stigma's there. I think slowly as an industry, we're doing better at PR, we're doing better at informing the public, and we're being transparent. And I think that has worked for us very, very well at Southwest Homes, is that we try to give you absolutely every single possibility. We let you dissect anything that you want in the construction side, because we know that's the missing piece. Yeah. That's been the one that's not been accepted as much from the public's eye.
I think what's nice about what you said is people don't give value to the efficiency of an assembly line. And this home's being built on an assembly line. And what was going through my mind was, I think of a Ferrari. It's a hand-built car. They do a lot of one, and they're hammering it out, and it's like an amazing car if you like that car.
Sure.
And then most of us drive a car off an assembly line, and it's built much more efficiently. No. We get a lot of bells and features that might even be more reliable in a lot of senses, and they are able to drive the cost down. And so really we got to change the story about manufactured from whatever it is in our past to just efficient. And not only efficient to lower the price, but efficiency in cost of ownership is what I'm hearing. They're built tight.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a true fact. I think the largest home builder in our country, if not the largest, one of the largest, is Clayton Homes.
Correct.
Which is a manufactured home builder.
That's right.
And so there's a need. I mean, even though there's a stigma, it's one of the largest industries as far as a home builder is concerned. So where do you assess that? Like, what happened in the story that the country's largest home builder is a manufactured home builder, yet there's this stigma with them?
Yeah, I just think that we need to do a better job. And you're absolutely right, Brad. I mean, the efficiencies that you see, it's no different, again, going back to the metaphor of the phone. Would you pay 5 times the amount to have someone show up to your house and build your phone on your table?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't ever use that comparison with anything else really that we as consumers use. But with housing, it seems to be something we can't overcome. And I would say that even more so today with the labor shortages and the bottlenecks that we see as a construction industry, we're going to have automated systems. We're going to go move to, in fact, I was just at a conference with the CEO of Clayton, and Cafco and Champion, which are the largest 3 home manufacturers in the country. And they're saying that they are pouring a lot of money and a lot of investment, time, research into AI systems in their factories. And they're like, that's going to be the way of the future because, the trades, the skills that we need at the factory are being depleted. We're seeing, we're losing more and more of that interest in the factory. And so I think as a whole, we just have to be doing back to your question, a better job at just informing and doing well at the marketing side. And that's something that when I came into it, which wasn't too long ago, but when I came in, I had to convince myself that this was a good product, that this was good quality. So you almost have to go. It's kind of a conversion of micro communities. You go to Texas, and I think those folks are well convinced that they rather save their $200,000 and buy a manufactured home that's set on an engineered permanent foundation. Where before in the past, you could see in the country and see a map of higher density manufactured only in very low income areas, and that seems to be shifting now.
That's good.
And obviously we see that in our own market.
Yeah. So really, manufactured home. If I'm hearing you, they're automating like our auto industry did.
Absolutely.
It used to be people assembling those cars, and now there's a lot of robots and AI in there, and so now we're going to get that in our homes. So just as there's a stigma or a preconceived notion of what a manufactured home is that's wrong, there's also a preconceived notion, I'm guessing, about who the customer is. So can you give us a description of like who's buying your homes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The proudest aspect of what I get to do every day is that we're meeting all types of different demographics, which for me is something that as the founder, as the owner of the company, I really instilled into our team that we need to be able to. Yes, we're a very strong retirement community. I understand that. I still think that over maybe 60% or so of the homes we sell are still to retirees, most of them coming from out of state. And then the remaining is young families, singles. So the majority, again, to answer your question, 60% is retirees. And these folks are, they're feeling the frustrations of looking into the market, really wanting to live here, really appreciating what we have here in this area. And again, going and shopping and going to the model homes and saying, okay, this is this much money, this is that much money. They come into Southwest Homes and it's an educational moment for us. We're transparent. This is what the house, I spec almost every house right now. Meaning I have to actually buy the land and buy the house, all optioned out, all ready to go turnkey. And I've done that because if not, we're still looking at about a 12 to 16 month construction time. So, and if we want to talk about efficiencies, in a normal market, a manufactured home can be built from the order being finalized to when that house rolls out of the factory in about 6 weeks. Those homes now take about 16 months or so to be built. That's how much of a backlog there is in the country.
So is it backlog driven, or is it also you're like everybody else, the supply chain, labor, are all those things impacting?
Oh yeah, it's the soup of all ingredients right now to make things. So as of right now, the consensus is that we are backlogged about 500 houses per manufacturing facility in the country. So
wow,
that's about on average and that just means that they're not making a dent in the backlog. So as developers or builders are building new communities out, they kind of get some allocation, they get some priority in building those out. And so they're not really making a dent on those backlog orders. And so right now, well, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but as far as who's buying our homes, our folks typically sell their house back wherever they're coming from at least $1 million to $2 million, $1.5 million or something like that. It seems to be the average. And they'll come out here and they'll weigh their options as to, site built, manufactured, what areas. Manufactured homes tend to be a little more on the rural side. So they have some elbow room. We have anywhere from 1/4 acres up to 2 acre lots, seems to be our bread and butter. And so these folks love the idea of coming out here, them living in a 75 square foot lot in, say California or something like that in a 1980 subdivision. They got $1.5 million for their house. They come out here and then they upgrade and get an acre with a brand new manufactured home on it with all the bells and whistles, all the energy standards that they saw in site built, but they save $200,000. They're in it at $350,000, $375,000, and they put the rest in the bank for the retirement. And that seems to be a very consistent, very typical type of transaction that we see.
Nice. So you're really helping people move for that transition from working. They always say your home's usually most people's biggest investment.
Right.
And in a good market, it's their biggest savings.
That's right.
Because it's all that appreciation. So you're helping them transition into retirement. But I also heard you say you have young families that are starting out, that are looking for these homes. I know there's been this, is it real property? Is it personal property when it comes to manufactured homes? And for those who don't know, like real property is a stick-built home that's on the dirt, and you can go to a bank and you can get a loan and finance that house. You still need the down payment, and you still need to qualify. The big thing with manufactured homes has been they're not the banks and the lending institutions haven't treated them the same as a stick-built home traditionally. Do you see that changing, and are people able to put a deposit down and finance, or how do they get in if they're not the retiree that's selling their home but they're just starting out in their career?
Yeah. So one of the biggest benefits, I guess, or gains that the industry made is that now it's becoming easier to affix those properties onto real property and to make that one whole package. So, for example, everything we sell qualifies for FHA, conventional, VA, USDA. So all of the GSEs, the government-backed loans, are all our homes qualify for them now, which has changed the way, drastically has changed the way on how buyers are able to obtain or purchase these homes.
So as a consumer, my experience would be the same going to a master plan community, buying a home, and going to one of your developments and buying a home from a financing perspective.
That's correct.
I have the same experience.
That's correct. And you're looking at very, very similar, and that's also another maybe myth that needs to be kind of busted down, but the interest rates, when you're going for a 30-year FHA mortgage, fixed, say an existing home somewhere in the Prescott area, if it's a new home in a master community, or if it's a manufactured home, there's no discrepancy nor difference in those products now.
That's that's just recent, right?
That's very recent.
Because it used to be, weren't manufactured homes considered personal property?
That's correct.
So you had to get a loan on personal property, which might have put it in, well, when interest rates were, say, 3 to 4, it would put it in like the 8, 9, or 10% range. So there's that big spread.
Gap. Yeah, big spread.
And now that's closed.
That's completely closed now.
Oh,
yeah. To the consumer side, there's no difference. And that, I guess I should probably emphasize that's when I say they're comparing and weighing the options of a site build in a new community or a manufactured home, the financing now, which used to be a huge problem, is now identical. So that's what gives us the ability for them to choose, the manufactured, manufactured side. Yeah,
that's great. So let's take a moment and we'll pivot to another area. So when we think of a community and we think of a design, and we get this question sometimes, why did that retailer, say Fry's, go there? We want a grocer out where we live. Why is Walmart where they are? Why do people locate where they're at? And so there's a lot of design questions. And our answer is the same, but it varies kind of depending on the context, in that design of a community really is in the private sector. And it's these men and women and companies that have a dream, have an idea of a business, and then they choose where they think their business will succeed. And so, a retailer chooses the location they want to be based on how they assess that, right?
Sure.
And on the flip side of that are the people. Where do they live? And that is just as important to the design of a community. So I'd like to talk to you about, from your perspective, how do you see your product fitting into the design of a community? Because I see the community as all walks of life. And what makes a really rich community to me is one where we have all those walks of life, and they can all come together and engage together. So we have the doctors, the nurses, the trades, the laborers, the finance people. They're all they can live together, but they may choose different price points for their home. But it doesn't mean that one is better than the other or one is more important than the other. So when you're thinking of your manufactured home, Southwest Homes, how do you fit into the design, and how do you design, I think you said you buy land, 10 acres to design a community. How do you go about thinking of your design?
Yeah, my design is, I was talking to you guys a little bit earlier. For the sake of speed, we've taken down what we call micro communities. We've brought these micro communities off the ground, which is really 5 lots clustered together in the same environment, the same place. And we do that for a couple reasons. One is just speed. If you get into subdivision statutes, that process turns into a year. And that's all just for us to be able to put affordable housing into the market as much as possible. When it comes to the design, what we found, or what I've found really in Southwest Homes, is that you're having the folks that are at the retirement age that are making these decisions, but you're also having, because of price point, because of affordability that's attainable, you have the younger folks too. We don't have to be as intentional, I guess, in making sure that, I agree 100% with you that our communities flourish and are vibrant and feel great when we have all walks of life here enjoying life together. Everybody has a piece to bring. Everybody's valued. And for us in our micro communities, it's been very neat to see that there's no division there because there's no price point division. And I think that unfortunately as a society, when you can trace this back for many, many years historically about us humans, but we try to always compartmentalize or categorize or get into the socioeconomics of what hierarchy we live in, right? So this community lives here and we spend this much money and this is what our houses are worth. And so we see something beautiful happening on the Southwest home side in these micro communities, these small pockets of developing these homes. That price point isn't divisive in that sense anymore. So you have neighbors and you have folks that live together, that talk together, they go and have barbecues together, and they're in very different walks of life. So I guess for me, the takeaway there is that it's not, say, developing. I didn't design a 200 lot subdivision, but what's interesting to me is that if you put out great product, a great quality home, and that price point is attainable for whatever reason, right? You want to put more in your retirement savings, or you just are so darn frustrated as a first-time home buyer, and now you're convinced, now you're somewhat, call it converted, now that you see the light in knowing, wow, this is not inferior quality, this is a great product, we would want to live here on an acre. Those two worlds now are kind of coming together, and so there's not much of an intention there. I'm not going to take credit and say, well, that's just a genius move on my part or anything like that. It's just interesting to see that it happens organically.
Well, it supports that notion that if we can put away our preconceived notions, which I just think is our lazy brain working. You said we like to compartmentalize things, and I think our brains do that because it's easier for us to function in life if we just say, oh, that's Southwest Homes, oh, that's master plan community, we have all our definitions. But what I heard you say that was really cool is when price is no longer the driver, you have essentially millionaires that are selling their $1.5 million homes. So I guess they qualify as a millionaire.
Sure.
And a young family that's just starting out and they're living together, but all of a sudden that status symbol is gone.
That's right.
What flourishes with that, and I think that's what is the magic of design of a community, is when we can start to break down those barriers and get people out of being so fixed-minded about things and just say, like, what would it look like if this happened?
That's right.
And it's so hard today, I think, a lot of the media, TV, wherever you walk, it's always trying to divide us. It's always trying to find a reason why I can put a wedge between two people and create friction, rather than just stepping back and saying, well, what does that mean? And being curious about it. And a lot of what we try to do is be curious first and try to understand, well, what does that mean?
Sure.
What happens? And so it's really cool, your little experiment you're running, the micro communities. I like that. So we got a new term today, micro communities by John, Southwest Homes.
Yeah.
Coming soon to a neighborhood near you.
Yeah, that's right.
So what do you think, and I think you've touched on a little bit, but I really want to make sure everybody hears it. What's the need that you see your company is filling in our community that is a part of making the larger community whole and complete?
Yeah, I see it as twofold. So the first need and the obvious need is we're bringing quality, affordable housing. And don't get me wrong, you can order a manufactured home to be bare bones. That's still a thing. You can still do that. At Southwest Homes, we tried to get as close as possible to what is seen in the market, site built. Again, amenities, features, energy standards, all that stuff. So for us, it's really being with the magic of off-site building, the efficiencies of the factory, we're able to still make home ownership attainable. And that is our number one goal every single day. And it's not to someone specific. It's not to cater to retirees or anything. It's literally just to sharpen the pencil every single day, grind it out on trying to find land that's now really expensive, and try to do our part in this as well. My background comes from real estate brokerage side, and you're one-on-one either in the car with these folks that are frustrated, disappointed, hopeless, essentially, of not being able, just feeling like the bus is left, that they're just not ever going to be able to attain home ownership. So that's our first one. Our first one is the fact that we can bring quality, affordable housing into our market. The second one is more of a global, I think, need, and that is that we're trying to do our part to break the stigma. We're trying to do our part to show folks that there is some magic and some consideration, that we should spend the time with factories, with efficiencies that, again, we're fine with them with everywhere else, right? Food, our phones, our cars. But then when it comes to housing, there's still that friction. There's still that stigma there. So I would say that that's our number 2 goal, is to make sure that we are proud of the homes that we're putting out in the market, and then that they're affordable, that they're attainable to every buyer, every demographic, all walks of life, doesn't matter. We just want to be able to do that for our community.
So like you're keeping the American dream alive for a lot of people. And I was watching the tail end of a 60 Minutes episode a few weeks ago, months ago, and it was about these Wall Street REITs that are buying up starter homes across the country, right? Saw the same one, and the statement that stuck to my head, and it hit me in a really bad way, was the guy. She said, "Well, what do you say about the American dream?" And people wanting to buy a home and have their piece of the pie, which has always been how we grew up in America, right? You're gonna own a home,
I know
right?
where you're going with this, and it stuck with me too.
He just said, America can't afford the dream anymore, so we rent it to them.
That's right.
And I was just like, it hit me as like, what a horrible thought. Maybe he's right, I don't know, but I'm still not accepting it.
Sure.
And I still think there's a way that if we in the community put our minds together, we can solve this problem. And we don't need people telling us how to do it, like telling us what wages should be, or telling us where we can live or how we can live and what we can put. If we can just all come together and be curious, I think there's a way to solve that and keep the American dream alive. And the other thing that hit me with what you said was, people, for some reason, they think about the manufactured home like it's manufactured and it's delivered here. And we think about cars that way, but we're fine with that with cars.
Sure.
But I think everything in between, all the food products, I think if people knew how it actually got from where it started to their plate, they might not have the same. Yeah. There's a lot of things that it's best we don't know. Yeah. How did that sandwich get on my plate? It's right.
It's very true.
I think of Dirty Jobs, right?
Yeah.
And you when you watch that, you're like, oh my God, I never knew all that happened behind it. And so I think we just have to work on that, this is the way the world runs, efficiencies, and we're trying to get efficient to keep costs down, to keep the American dream alive in your industry, home ownership, because I still think that's important. What makes our country great is we have that standard of living that is so much bigger than other countries. And until you travel to other countries, you don't really see it.
Absolutely.
And you got to keep that dream alive. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to do it.
I want to just go someplace as we start to wrap up. So the American dream's always been there since this country was founded. And there's a history behind master planned communities, how they've evolved over the years. And now we have manufactured homes and how they're entering the market. When you look at your crystal ball, where do you see your industry in manufactured homes going in the next 5, 10, or 20 years? What role will it play in this American landscape?
Yeah, well, back to that conference that I attended with these CEOs, obviously there's no better person to hear it from them, because they're kind of leading the way of where they're wanting to go in the future. We're going to see a lot more of the manufactured home product utilized in a more site-built master community traditional way. So all that means is instead of having 150 lot master plan community with site-built homes, the efficiencies are going to be there if AI kicks in and they make these factories even more efficient. I think it's going to be, at that point, we're just being darn near just stubborn to not be able to tap into that resource. And I mean, I think right now the magic number of housing shortage in our country is 6 million houses. So it's like
staggering number,
absolute staggering number based on migration trends, based on, I mean, sure, the birth rate could see a decrease, but as a global stat, I mean, we're still going to be growing as a country, and we're already behind 6 million houses.
Well, I heard a stat where I think Arizona is over 200,000. It might be pushing 300,000 that we're short.
Yeah.
So you think of that, and there's that whole concept argument discussion about growth. It's like, well, we can't change our environment. We are the Southwest. We have a lot of sunshine. We have a lot of great weather. People will move here. There's no marketing effort that is going on that's a big secret with developers that is pulling all these people to here to live. They're discovering it on their own. They go on the internet
absolutely.
And they're like, there's 3 feet of snow outside this winter and the wind's blowing and there's 4 more feet coming. They're like, is there a better place to live, right? And
absolutely.
Southwest comes up on the radar a lot, right? Yeah. And then there's cost of living issues for other places where it's just getting too expensive to live. And again, this place, we're teetering on becoming unaffordable, but compared to other places, we're still affordable.
Sure.
So people are coming. And so I think we have to get our mind around how do we solve for our housing shortage and not fight it. Because I watched a video and it was an architect who I think he was like the master plan architect behind Singapore.
Okay.
And he was brought in to design a community, what that island state would look like. And he said, when we started, we were designing for 50 years in front of us. And 2070 stuck out. And he's like, or maybe they were designing for 70 years out into the future. And he said, now we plan for 50 years out. And he goes, basically, we're going up to about the year 2070. He said, because at that point, from now to then, the world's population is going to continue to grow. We're going to become a bigger and bigger planet of people. And at that point in time, he saw the world's population would be such that the whole world would start to address population. And he said, until that point in time that the whole world comes together and deals with population, we have to plan for people to live here.
Yep.
Which is kind of what you're saying. We got this shortage. We can't ignore them. Otherwise, we're just creating homeless people, and we don't want that.
No.
So do you ever see a day where the stick built is something that we tell our children and grandchildren and great grandchildren about? Can you believe they used to build those on site?
It sounds crazy to say it in today's world, but I would say that no, that's not a far-fetched idea. I think if we look at 15, 20 years out, I think that we would be shocked at the efficiencies that exist then and there, addressing population growth, addressing housing shortages, and think, well, how in the world did we think this would ever work with a bunch of guys swinging hammers out there? And so I do think that that's not true just in housing. I think that's true in a lot of many sectors that we see today. I mean, having AI being introduced would be huge. And it's not something that I can move on from easily, I'll be honest with you. It's still the patriotic side of me, I'm a hands-on guy. I was a firefighter here at Chino Valley for 3.5 years. I like work, and I think work is really good for people. So part of me is, of course, it's bittersweet because I know that that's where we need to get to be able to address the things that we're going to see in this country as far as population growth and housing shortages. But there's a little piece of me still that the nostalgic side where it's like, man, but it is nice to go to a job site and see people putting a house together. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's going to be somewhere where we're inevitably going to go. And I see it back to the question on master plan communities. Right now, manufactured homes take up about 10 to 12% of the new housing starts in the country. The industry's always been, I guess, just kind of confused as to why that is. Why haven't they gained more market share in the country when the stigma's reducing, the affordability of it seems to be increasing, right? So things get more expensive out on site built, and they're still attainable on the offsite. But these CEOs at this conference felt that in the next 5 to 10 years or so, that would probably double, if not triple, just based on what they foresee in the efficiencies in the factories. And that tells you a lot.
So a third of the market then.
That's right.
Will be manufactured.
Yeah. And you could see the trend as a whole happening in concrete 3D printing.
Yeah.
So the idea of offsite, I mean, I always tell folks, it's like, you have a very stern opinion about manufactured homes, but when someone throws out a trendy, fatty word like a mod home or a tiny home or a shipping container home, we're all about it, right? We're like, whoa, don't care how bad the installation is on that sea container, but that looks cool, right? Or let's get, it's so they're all about that. But when I tell them, it's like we've been chipping away at factory building for quite a long time, and I think now it's the turning point. I think we're finally at the turning point of now as a whole society looking at tiny homes, 3D printing, manufactured homes. I think people are more inclined to say, this is the way it's going to go. This is the way we're going.
Yeah, it's amazing how we get latched onto a term. So a tiny home is exciting, sexy, and living in 250 square feet sounds great for a family of 4, but
for 5 months.
It's just a manufactured home, really small, right?
That's right.
So it's funny how we get that.
Yeah.
And you can add so much to the manufactured home. So I know there's some developers that are, when they arrive, they're adding a garage.
That's right.
Or they're putting a deck on. So to your point, I think they're going to be harder and harder to differentiate from a stick-built and a manufactured home.
Absolutely.
And so it's good to see we're closing that gap, and we're doing it in a way that's solving problems. One is affordability and attainability. So we're excited to see that. Excited to see your creativity, and if it wasn't for guys like you, just like, let's try it. Let's go buy this land and try to put it together, and then people are embracing you by buying the product.
Yeah, absolutely.
So want to thank you for joining us and sharing your story and how it all fits in to design of a community, because that's what we're trying to discuss here, is that there's a lot that goes into this, and it's not all perfect.
Absolutely.
And we'll just keep slugging away.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Living a Good Life. We look forward to seeing you real soon.